something happening to me. There's something awakening in my mind. I can't control it.
What did you see?
There's a crusade coming.
Do you often dream things that happen just as you dreamed them?
Yes.
The test is simple. Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
What's in the box?
Pain. You inherit too much power. You have proven you can rule yourself. Now you must learn to rule others. Something none of your ancestors learned.
My father rules an entire planet.
He's losing it.
He's getting a richer one.
He'll lose that one too. Arakis is a death trap.
I'll kill him. This is an extermination. They're picking my family off one by one.
Let's fight like demons.
An animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape. What will you do?
I know you.
One day, the legend will be born. All of civilization depends on it.
The future. I can see it. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer.
My Lord Duke.
Where the fear is gone, only I will remain.
Go, go, go!
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This is going to be my Dune trailer video, The Sleeper Must Awaken. So there's a whole bunch of Easter eggs here. I'll explain what they're doing with this movie and how they're covering the story from the first book of Dune, because this is just meant to be the first half of the story. Of course, I'll be doing videos for the Dune series, so be sure to subscribe to get everything. We'll do a new Amazon giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave your favorite moment from the trailer on the video. So we'll just start at the beginning of the trailer and work our way through shot by shot, talk about Easter eggs as we go along. Most of you have probably seen or read at least some of the Dune story or encountered it at some point in the past. One of the most shared, memed moments from any of the Dune series, the books, is that opening prologue from the 1984 movie, Arakis, Dune, Desert Planet, with Virginia Madsen's opening prologue scene. The funny thing about the song that they put on this too is it's actually Pink Floyd from Dark Side of the Moon. So that's just a bit of a wink and a clever Easter egg on the concept of Arakis, Dune, Desert Planet. That's the way that the book opens, that's the way that David Lynch's 1984 movie opened. They sort of skip over that for the opening of this trailer because it opens with his dream as he wakes up and he's talking to the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother about the visions that he's having of the future without understanding that he's having visions of the future. He has all this power that he doesn't know about yet. The sleeper must awaken. He's effectively talking about that in his voiceover at the beginning of the trailer. There's something happening to me, there's something awakening in my mind as he has this vision of Shawnee and the sun rising while they're on Arrakis. So obviously, this is all scenes from later in the movie, but it's visions that he's having at the very beginning of the movie. When he talks about seeing the crusade coming, that's obviously the civil war that happens on Arrakis when the Harkonnens come for them after they're betrayed by Dr. Yui and the Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother. Then they give you the scene of the famous test. Obviously, that's a big moment during the 1984 film. It's a big moment during the books. The Reverend Mother has come to Caladan to test him to see if he has the power that they think that he has, if he's going to become the Kwisatz Haderach, the result of 10,000 years of selective breeding to create a perfect being to lead humanity on the golden path away from their demise. While he is the protagonist of the movie, the main character, the important thing to remember though is that he's not the most important character at the beginning of the story. One of the biggest characters who's driving the story itself before the events of the movie pick up is actually his mother, Lady Jessica, and a lot of her choices inform the really big moves that the plot has during the story, especially early on. His mother, Lady Jessica, was actually born to the Harkonnen family, but she's a member of the Bene Gesserit Order, and they ordered her to marry Duke Leto and give him a daughter so that they could wed that daughter to a Harkonnen prince, and end this long-running feud within the galaxy. So the whole thing is they do want to bring peace and lead humanity forward. It's just that the Bene Gesserit Order wants to be in control of that person, that perfect being. But Lady Jessica winds up falling in love with him and gives him a son that he wants, so that's where Paul Atreides comes in. He becomes the vessel for all this power that the Bene Gesserit has been orchestrating. So the Reverend Mother has come to see what's actually going on with him. That's why she's asking him these questions. Do you often have visions of things that come to pass? The concept of genetic memory is very important to the Dune mythology. The Reverend Mother at any given time of the Bene Gesserit Order possesses sort of like the sum total of all knowledge and memories from previous generations, but Paul Atreides, becoming the Kwisatz Haderach, also gains all those memories. When he says, I can see the future, that's actually part of his powers as the Kwisatz Haderach. He can actually see the golden path, but the whole thing about all this power that's bestowed on him is that it actually becomes a bit of a trap. I don't know if they're going to deal with this during the movie. They'll probably address it at some point. But he himself becomes sort of trapped within his own destiny, and it becomes a big problem for him later on. Lady Jessica also winds up giving birth to a little girl, Aaliyah, after Duke Leto has died, and she also gains those powers when she takes in the waters of life. So effectively, you have two characters with the powers of the Kwisatz Haderach in the Dune series. Obviously, most of the trailer is just focusing on the first half of the story, though, with him meeting the Sandworms, the sleeper must awaken, that big iconic moment from the 1984 film. That's sort of the moment when he eventually takes the waters of life and his powers start to awaken within him. He becomes conscious of his abilities. One of the differences between this film and the 1984 film, though, is that the David Lynch movie blew through a lot of the plot within that one movie, so you have to imagine that most of this will encompass the big civil war that happens on Arrakis, him meeting the Fremen, meeting Chani, and learning about his powers. Then the second half of the story will be what he does once he unlocks those abilities. I love the scene of him putting his hand in the box. Everybody remembers this from the 1984 film. Fear is the mind killer as he slowly starts to sense all these crazy things happening to it. This is the same scene from the 1984 film of him fighting with Gurney, played by Josh Brolin, Thanos himself. Oscar Isaac, who's playing Duke Leto, made all kinds of Josh Brolin jokes when the cast was doing their big interview for the movie earlier. Gurney's sort of their war master. He's the one that's teaching Paul to fight. Before all the craziness of the actual plot of the story, their whole idea is that eventually one day Paul will take over the family once Duke Leto dies of natural causes. Obviously that doesn't wind up happening, but Gurney is one of his most important teachers early on before all this happens. When the Bene Gesserit mother is talking to him about learning to rule himself and rule others, obviously that's all just foreshadowing for later in the movie once he becomes the most powerful person in the universe. It's also a bit of foreshadowing for the eventual God Emperor of Dune story, which isn't something that Paul Atreides gets too involved in. That's all about the golden path leading humanity forward. I think everyone's kind of hoping that if the movies are really successful, they'll actually do the story of his son, Duke Leto II, who becomes God Emperor of Dune, as a giant TV series. When the Reverend Mother is talking about his father losing the planet, she's foreshadowing the events of the big betrayal that's going to be happening later in the movie. So it's not that they hate Duke Leto and they want to get rid of House Atreides, it's just that they feel like the only way to achieve this golden path now, based on current events, is to throw him under the bus. I love the production design, I love the look of the sandworms, everything looks great. Obviously, they tried to go back to a lot of the original Frank Herbert Dune concept art for their designs. Really cool Easter egg here too. When their ships are landing on Arrakis, don't these look a little bit like Jawa's sandcrawlers? So if you're not a huge fan of the Dune series, what you might not realize is that George Lucas was actually inspired by a lot of what Frank Herbert did with that first Dune book when he was writing the Star Wars stories and doing the original trilogy. But really, it's not them trying to do Star Wars with Dune. The reason why it looks a little bit like Star Wars is because Star Wars itself was inspired by that original Dune stuff. We get our first look at the Beast, played by Dave Bautista. I'm sure he's going to be an amazing monster during the movie. We get our first look at Stellan Skarsgård, who's playing Baron Harkonnen himself. As we see them landing on the planet, we meet Jason Momoa's Duncan Idaho for the first time. He's actually one of the first people as part of the Duke's forces to meet the Fremen. When the Emperor tells Duke Leto that he is now in charge of spice production and has to move his family to Arrakis, he sends Duncan Idaho there ahead of their forces to sort of get the lay of the land. What a lot of people don't realize, though, is that early in the story, the planet Arakis itself is one of the most important characters in the Dune story through all of the Dune novels because of its relationship with the sandworms and the spice itself. It's the sandworms themselves that create the spice that's so critical to the function of the universe. They use it for faster than light travel. It has all kinds of medicinal properties, all kinds of psychedelic properties. It's sort of like this wonder drug that does so many different things, but it's only produced on this one planet. But most of the universe does not realize that the sandworms themselves are what create the spice. So it's really the sandworms themselves that are the most important resource in the universe. And when the Reverend Mother says, one day the legend will be born, all of civilization depends on it, she's actually talking about Paul's son. She's not talking about Paul himself. But I don't know if they're actually going to get to that in any of the movies. They might save that for an eventual Children of Dune series. If you're wondering why there's not a whole lot of Zendaya's Chani character in this trailer, there's a lot of shots of her early on, but she said that she's not really big during this first part of the story. She's probably going to be a much bigger character during the sequel. That's just because he doesn't really encounter her till after this big revolt, and it sounds like that's going to take up most of the events of this first movie. I love the reveal of the sandworms too. Does this not look so much like the original concept art? And it just gives you an idea for the scale of things, just how massive the sandworms can get. But everyone, let me know in the comments what you're most hyped up about. This is obviously just a small part of the story. Like I said, this is going to be a two-part story for the first book. The movie's supposed to come out in December. Hopefully, theaters will all be open everywhere and we can actually go to a theater and see it. But there'll be more trailers in the next couple of months, so of course I'll do videos when they drop that new footage. Everyone, click here for my brand new Chadwick Boseman Black Panther video, and click here for that brand new Mandalorian Season 2 teaser. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe. I'll see you guys tonight.